Have you ever been in the zone in sports? Yeah, sports psychology. Let's talk about how psychology fits within the context of sports science. And it's huge. And in essence, every unit or every discipline we talk about by itself is huge in terms of influencing and understanding sports science. So let's go through sort of a big picture perspective of sports psychology under our Foundations of Sports Science class. So what is sports psychology? Well, oh, no, let me, sorry, I've got to share my screen. Right. All right, so there's our title slide, Introduction to Sports Psychology. Well, what is sports psychology? Well, it's the study of psychological factors that influence performance, participation, and well-being, again, in the context of sport. Focuses on both performance enhancement as well as mental health support. And I put this picture of this textbook. There's a lot of great textbooks out there in the popular literature about sports psychology, mental skills, what have you. And the Inner Game of Tennis is one that caught my eye a long time ago in trying to understand how the brain influences performance. And it's popular literature, and it's something that is very common. You can find many books about what you should be thinking about during the course of competition, under pressure situations, in practice, and what have you. But if you want to be a sports psychologist, there are some specific credentials you need to obtain. I am not a sports psychologist, and so I have to be very careful of what information I present in that context. It is not something that anyone can just be a sports psychologist or be hired as a sports psychologist. You need to have some credentials. So education-wise, typically a bachelor's degree in psychology, kinesiology, or some related field, exercise science, what have you. And then going on for a graduate degree, master's and or doctorate degree, usually required. In the U.S., most practicing sports psychologists have a PhD or a psychology doctorate in clinical counseling psychology with additional training in sports science. Here at UNLV, we have that type of program where you can be trained as a clinical psychologist who specialize in sport. Some people pursue a master's in sport and exercise psychology, but independent practice often requires a doctorate for licensure, a terminal degree. And speaking of licensure, to legally call yourself a psychologist in the US, you must be licensed as a psychologist in your state. That means completing doctoral program in psychology, a terminal degree, supervised clinical hours, and passing the examination for professional practice in psychology. So it's intensive. Without the licensure, you might work as a mental performance consultant or a sports psychology consultant, but you cannot provide clinical therapy. And so there is a gap between those, and it is important to recognize that. And so there is some, if you enjoy this area, there is some specific training to undergo. So where does sports psychology enter our world of sport science? Well, as I said, Inner Game of Tennis is an example of popular literature. And the paper that you'll read for this module is on the effects of associative, dissociative, internal and external focus of attention on running economy. Now, running economy is something we covered back in exercise physiology. It's the rate of oxygen consumption for running a given speed. And in this paper, they looked at the influence of these different sports psychology concepts on a physiological parameter, in this case, running economy. So it's good to look at definitions. We got to know the terminology. So focus of attention, there's internal versus external. A definition of those: internal focus directs the attention to bodily movements or sensations. I may be thinking about elbow flexion extensions, some internal external rotations, breathing, what have you. External focus directs the attention outward to the environment or the task outcome. So objects, scenery, maybe some performance outcome of, throwing to first base, and you're thinking about, you're focusing on the first baseman. And the key point here is internal focus can disrupt automatic movement control and reduce efficiency, while external focus enhances performance. This is a general broad statement, or really still a hypothesis at this stage. And so if you're doing 2.5 somersault springboard off the 3-meter board, the idea is to have some form of external focus to enhance that performance versus some internal focus, which may get things a little confused. So sometimes when we get confused on the details of movements, we're not thinking globally about the movement. The other aspect of this paper is attentional strategy, associative versus disassociative. Associative strategy means monitoring body sensations and performance cues, fatigue, cadence, breathing. You're really focused on something that's happening within the body. Whereas disassociative strategy means diverting attention away from the body and tasks. So solving a puzzle, watching a video, or as you're running a marathon, maybe you're doing some math calculations or thinking about something other than how you feel during the marathon. The key point, recreational runners in this study benefited more from a disassociated strategies than associative ones, as well as when focusing on external cues versus internal cues. And so there's a lot of neat research on each of these areas. This is a neat study that pulled both of these areas together. And so what the mind is focusing on influences performance. Okay, so why is sports psychology important? Well, having a good understanding of sports psychology will enhance athletic performance, pressure situations, performance in pressure situations. Sports psychology supports the idea of mental health and well-being of athletes, and this is critical. Athlete suicide is a real problem. And having some skills to deal with some of the pressures of participating in sport and competition is important. Sports psychology can help improve team cohesion and communication, helps athletes manage pressure, anxiety, and setbacks. And they do happen, right? I mean, we all have our memories of great sport moments. We probably have some memories of sport moments that didn't go so well. How do you handle those? How do you recover from those? How do you move forward? Sports psychology is all about that. Mental health in sport is a very important area, and this is something that has been a focus that I've seen grow more in the last 5 to 10 years. So you're balancing performance goals with psychology well-being is important. Common challenges to the athlete: stress, burnout, anxiety, depression. And we see this with kids starting competitive sport earlier and earlier. This is hard. It's hard on kids. Access to resources and support networks is important for mental health in sport. And athlete advocacy for mental health is also very important when you're on a sports science team. Maybe you're not a clinical sports psychologist, but you can advocate for getting someone who's trained in that area to be able to help athletes. And if we think back to the model that I presented in week 1 about athletes being placed in 4 quadrants: healthy, high performer, healthy, underperformer, unhealthy, underperformer, and unhealthy, high performer. We have those 4 quadrants. We want to move our athletes into the healthy, high performer area, and mental health is very much about that health in that context of that model. Sports psychology in action, psychological skills and training. There's all different ideas on visualization, goal setting, routines, reward systems, Sociology also comes into play here in terms of culture and training with people, or if you enjoy training on your own. All of these aspects come into sports psychology and helping the athlete. Relaxation techniques, breathing techniques, mindfulness skills are all important and all related to sports psychology, and recovery strategies in general are a lot about sport psychology, and even preparing for an event, what you do ahead of time. And this sports psychology fits our model of sports science. I've presented this model earlier in the semester, where we're all interested in helping and understanding human performance. And there's all these different elements that lead up to a particular performance. And sports psychology is really dealing with things up in this region here, where the environment is anything external to the person. And the environment could be it could be something that's very sports psychology related. I always give the example of going, in my backyard and shooting free throws. I could probably hit 8 out of 10 pretty consistently. But if I go to a basketball game and at halftime they call my ticket to come down and shoot free throws in front of 20,000 people or what have you, I won't do as well. Why? Because my brain is doing something that's telling the central nervous system to send maybe the wrong signal that ends up recruiting the wrong muscle at the wrong time, creating the wrong force applied in the wrong direction at the wrong time, which causes an error in displacement in time, ultimately the wrong movement and an error in performance, and I miss the free throw. So what we think about ultimately influences our ability to perform. And so sports psychology is very much in line with understanding human performance. It's one of several disciplines, and this is our focus on this week. We've done exercise physiology, biomechanics, data analytics, and other areas as well, nutrition. But this does highlight the mind-body connection as essential to performance. Take-home message: sports psychology addresses both performance optimization and mental health. Psychology skills are trainable, just like physical ones. Mental health well-being. Mental well-being is critical for long-term performance and performance growth. And I don't want to just think about our high-level athletes participating in high-level sports in college or even professional teams. This is an issue for the age group athlete, the mere mortal who's trying to run a marathon or compete in triathlon or participate in the age group sports, whether it be soccer or what have you. It's a lifelong skill of being mental, of approaching sport from a healthy mental perspective, and you can engage in sport throughout your life. Okay, thanks everybody. That's a big picture perspective of sports psychology in the context of sports science. Thank you.